My name is Julie Pearson, Little Thunder. Today is Friday, December 10th, and I'm interviewing Bill Rabbit as part of the Oklahoma Native Artists Project, sponsored by the Oklahoma Oral Histories Research Program. We're at the studio. Bill shares with his daughter Tracy in Pryor, Oklahoma. And thank you for taking the time to speak with me, Bill. You've been a force in Oklahoma Indian art for a long time, with many accomplishments behind you. Your dad is Cherokee from Maisie, Oklahoma, but you grew up in Wyoming. What was it like growing up in Casper?
Well, it was, I was the only Cherokee student in the school system where I went to school. So it actually was, it was no different than anywhere else. I was just another kid. But in different areas of Wyoming, you have more tribal things like the Cheyenne, Shoshone, and the Arapaho. But in Casper, it was just, I was a semi-white guy.
So you didn't run into any prejudice?
Oh, no.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Did your family make frequent trips back and forth to Oklahoma?
Yes, my dad, my grandmother, when she was alive, we'd come back here pretty often. And a couple of times we moved down here, and I went to school for a year or two, and then went back to Wyoming. And back and forth there for a while. But then my grandmother passed away, so it wasn't too long after that I enlisted in the Army and went to Vietnam.
Right. And I want to come back to that subject. What kinds of art experiences did you have in primary and secondary school?
Well, I remember I loved to paint, and it actually started in the kindergarten.
Wow. And
I have a certificate that my mother saved from kindergarten, a letter of completion, and it said that I might have some artistic ability, but I was troublesome. I couldn't get along with other students. And then, you know, through fourth grade, I think I won my first award. Tracy had it right there. Won my first award in a competition in Denver, Colorado. Got fourth place and $5. So from there, right on through high school, I would experiment, you know, and my problem was I always wanted to do things that they weren't teaching at the moment.
Did those include doing Indian images, or?
Well, actually, in Wyoming, I guess my introduction to art was things like Russell Remington, you know. I was told by everyone this is what you should like and paint. So I discovered real fast that I didn't have the ability to paint like them. So that's why I would experiment and paint it the way I liked it. And it worked out well over the years.
It sounds like your mom was very supportive, and your dad probably too. What did they do for a living?
Well, my dad was a structural iron worker, and my mother was a housewife. She had her hands full with me and my brother and my sister, and I tell you, I sure miss her. She was a wonderful person.
I understand. I know that you came into painting via jewelry making. Did you make any jewelry during high school, or?
No, what happened was here in Oklahoma, I guess this was back in the 60s, I believe. Indian turquoise was a big thing. Everywhere you went, there it was. So I knew how to weld and, cut brazing and all the different things we learned how to do. So I thought, well, I'm going to learn how to make jewelry. And I did. I made my first ring on our kitchen table. Had a fire brick and a propane torch.
Wow.
And I should have kept it. It would come out all right.
You enlisted for Vietnam, and just talking to other Indian veterans, I know that they were often sent out on the hardest assignments in a way, because there was that stereotype of the super warrior kind of stereotype. And if you were a country kid or a res kid, you did have good sharp senses and probably tracking skills, etc. Do that at all?
Not really. Not that I remember. I didn't notice it. When I think back about Vietnam, the government loves to send 18, 19-year-olds into battle because they'll follow instructions and they haven't lived long enough to really sit down and think about it. I went in because my dad was a World War II veteran, and he was well decorated, and I just thought that I owed my country a few years of my time, and it was a different experience. It makes you appreciate a lot of things you never think about. So in that respect, it was a good thing.
When you came back, did you come to Wyoming, or did you go on to Oklahoma?
No, my parents had moved down here.
I see.
So I came back here, yeah.
And I think that was the one good thing, because it's you don't come back from war unscarred, but definitely the Indian community, even back then, was very different from mainstream society in terms of welcoming Indian veterans back home.
Well, when I came back, the general attitude of the country wasn't very good. They weren't really supportive of our troops, and when a lot of the guys went to Canada and everywhere else, the government, I feel, made a big mistake. They set a precedent for running. And now we have a volunteer army, and I'm so glad to see the country supporting our troops. It helps a lot. But when I come back, it was a lonely home return.
But was it different in Indian country a little bit?
No, I think the Indian people are really, in general, very kind. And, they're supportive.
Had you already decided when you came back you wanted to be a professional artist, or was it a process?
No, what happened, I got married early, had my daughter, first baby, and I went to work for a company welding, and I did that for a while. Then I went into jewelry making, and from there I went into jewelry making and painting, and then I went into painting full time. It actually had got to the point when there wasn't enough time to do shows and work. So that initial step of painting full time was kind of scary.
Sure.
But my wife supported me and said go for it, so we worked together. But I tell you, there were a few times in the beginning that I wasn't sure if I'd made the right decision. But I tell you, it's like someone throwing you in a pond. You learn how to swim real quick.
Right. How did you and Karen meet?
Well, we met in Teleclaw through a mutual friend of hers. And I don't know, we argued a little bit in the beginning, and then next time I went down there, she changed her attitude. And we've been arguing for 45 years.
When and where did you sell your first painting once you embarked on painting full time?
You know, I believe, well, you know, I remember Linda Grievers did a show there, and all the big names were in there. Here I was, a new fish in the pond.
For example?
Oh, well, there was Solomon McCombs, Bert Seaborn, Troy Anderson, a bunch. They were all there. And my most expensive painting was $35. And they were selling out, and I was sitting back there thinking, boy, I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time. So that when that evening was over, I told Karen I'm going to have to do this very seriously or get out. So that's what triggered me to try to improve every time I did a painting. Try to make it better, better, better. And so that first deal was at Linda Grievers. Then shortly after that, I had a nice painting and I priced it at $250 and sold it, and I thought I had arrived. And I remember saying, I wish that if I can sell every $250 painting I paint, I'll be happy. That was the beginning.
Was this around 1970? Do you remember approximately?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you describe your style and subject matter at that time?
Well, the 5 tribes wouldn't let me enter because I didn't paint the traditional flat-lined, that type of work. So I guess right in the beginning, I had great advice from Randy Wood. He's deceased. Randy said, paint what you like and share it with people, and if they like it, they'll buy it, and if they don't, they won't. So that was kind of how it started, you know. And it's true, you think about it, you can be the best at anything, and there's going to be 2 people walk up that don't like it, don't care about it, don't want to see it. So percentage-wise, if you could get 3 or 4 out of 10, you're doing all right.
And you were part of that, you know, wave of artists that was doing something different from the older generation, and so it took a little bit of exposure, I guess, for people to come around. I understand Ted Miller might have been helpful to you too in your career.
Ted was a great friend. You know, he passed away here recently. I just loved Ted because he was an outgoing, loud, big old bear.
And a knife maker, I might add, a really wonderful knife maker.
And, you know, we just hit it off right at the beginning. And Ted was a real giving person. So anytime Ted or Charles Pratt, they were all together then, could tell me about a show or be helpful, I'd give it a try. And those really were good days. But, you know, everything comes to an end.
And Bing Crosby handled a lot of your work for a while, and he wasn't, he didn't normally handle painting, did he?
No, not
How
really.
How did that come about?
Well, what happened was Ted was having a party at his home in Santa Fe. He had moved out there, and he had invited a lot of people. I'd never met Bing. So he came in and was looking around, and Ted had told him he needed to look at my paintings because they had dealt for several years. Well, he came in, kind of looked around, didn't give me any indication he thought they were worth anything. He said, yeah, okay, see you later. He left, and I thought, well, I guess that's 2 days later. Charles Pratt, we were traveling together. He had to go by Bing's business in Albuquerque, and we got down there, and Bing said, "Where's your paintings?" I said, "Well, they're in the truck." He said, "Bring them in. I want to buy them." So that's how we started off. He bought every one I had. So then for several years we worked together, and then Bing finally moved to, where is it? Utah, Park City. And we just kind of lost contact with each other, but every now and then we still do some things.
That's a great story. Do you remember when you won your first major award for painting? Or maybe one that was particularly important to you? I'm
not sure about that, but what comes to mind, I got a letter in the mail that the 5 tribes had made me a master artist. And I was on cloud 9. You know, because here you go, you've got a lot of prestigious artists that were masters. And I thought, you know, I was so happy for a while. And then, of course, everything kind of calms down. But I actually remember that more than any other award that I've got. On my brochure, there was, you know, different awards from the museum, different places in the country, but the reason I don't really keep them to mind is I told my daughter one day, I said, you know, a blue ribbon is great, but when a collector buys your work and writes a check, that's the real ribbon. So that's the way I've always been.
And that was in 1985 or mid-80s, was it, or earlier?
That started in the 80s.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
How about traveling? Did you and Karen travel to a lot of shows in the early days, and Tracy went to?
No, Tracy was going to school. She was going at Northeastern. She graduated. But up until, you know, she graduated, Karen and I traveled, oh gosh, all over the country. I've done so many shows, it's scary. But, you know, when you have a family and you're young, you'll try things like that. And one thing I can brag about, I'm not lazy. I've always worked. So, you know, the rest is history. And then when Tracy, like I say, when she graduated, she started doing shows with me because of her interest in the art. But painting's been good to me, I'll tell you.
You definitely, I think, learned, it sounds like, being around the some of the older artists in the 70s, you know, I'm not pricing my work quite the way I need to. What about, and I know you've mentioned that sometimes you weren't looking so much to borrow a style as you wanted to learn from other people's techniques, how they achieved a certain effect.
Right.
Can you give an example of how?
Well, you know, you can look at a piece of artwork, a painting, and since I was, I learned everything by doing it. I never studied under any teacher or artist, but I was just smart enough I could look at something and try to figure out how they did that. And a lot of times I would ask the artist. And most artists will share, they say, well, you do this and this. A funny story, I did a snow scene one time, and I was putting them dots on one at a time.
Oh.
And then, of course, someone said, use a fan brush. So, boy, I had a real snowstorm going.
So much quicker.
But, you know, it's funny how naive people are. But I tried to learn different technique, different styles that I used in my work today. And, you know, there's a few things that I do that I haven't seen another artist do. So maybe that's my contribution, I don't know.
How did the Indian art landscape change then from the 70s to the 80s?
Well, you know, I'm not sure of the exact date, but Oklahoma started to, the oil money was starting to run out. Everything slowed down. So I decided that I was going out to the Southwest, because that reminded me a lot of my home state, Wyoming, in different areas. So I went out there. I loved the country. I loved the food. I fit right in. It was, well, as a matter of fact, when I joined the Army, just prior to that, I was accepted to go to the Institute in Santa Fe. And I'd have been there when Ben Harjo was. But instead of doing that, you know, I jumped right in and wanted to be a soldier.
So did you relocate? Did you actually live out there for a while, or?
Well, no.
Just sold more out there.
Off and on.
And I think that's one of your really well-known, because your style has gone through different phases like all artists, but the Southwestern, you know, imagery, Southwestern Indian images, and then the kind of pastel colors and the clouds were.
Well, I started, always admired the artist Arte, and I admired the Chinese and Japanese artists. And I liked the way they would elongate a figure. So I started doing that back when I was with Doris, literal. And it went from there to all over the Southwest. And I don't know if I was the only one doing it, but I definitely did my part.
So the elongated figures sort of happened, foreshadowed the Southwestern kind of phase.
Yeah.
And there's a really nice, I think, what is this use of line that's very sinewy. Did that come with it?
Well, back in those days, before I had my stroke, I could take a 24 by 36 and do a hairline from corner to corner and had complete control. I paint today, but I paint with two hands. And this hand is numb. But I just thank God that I can still do what I enjoy.
Right, it's a blessing. How about what were some major changes that you remember during that time on the Indian art scene and maybe in your style as well?
I made a lot of money.
That was a good time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there was a time when everything I could paint, there was a market for it, and it'll spoil you. As a matter of fact, I just, like everything, you think, boy, it's going to be like this forever, but things change. And, but the Indian art, I tell you, it's been good to me. So, that has always been my main goal, is to paint what pleases me, and hopefully the public will enjoy it. And why it's happened to me, I don't know, but I'm very thankful.
Well, and it's hard too, that the pressure when you know that you're selling everything and people are waiting in line. How did you deal with that?
What a big brush. No, I'll tell you, back in those days, I was painting 7 days a week, probably about 12 to 16 hours a day.
What was like a typical day for you? How early did you get to work? Or maybe you were a night painter.
No, I did both. No, I thought I was, in those days, I was in good health, and I thought I could do anything, to work 10, 15 hours a day was nothing.
In 1990, the Indian Arts and Crafts Act was passed, which required artists to provide proof of tribal enrollment or be certified by their tribe as artists with that heritage. Do you remember the impact of that bill on galleries or individual artists?
Well, I joined IACA out of Albuquerque, and I think some artists that were representing themselves as belonging to any particular tribe, some of them couldn't prove it, even though they'd represented themselves that way their whole life. So it had an impact on a lot of artists. What makes me sad is, as far as I know, Indians are the only ones that have to prove they're Indian.
What changes do you see in the Indian art scene today?
Well, I'm really not, I can't use a computer, but I've seen some things that are pretty neat. I think artists are gonna experiment, continue to grow, and I like all kinds of art. If I had more time and the knowledge, that's what I would do. I would learn how to use the technology and turn it into art.
Have you noticed a change in terms of like tribal support for artists from their own
Well,
tribes?
the Cherokee tribe has been very supportive. Chad Smith has really tried to awaken the people to their history, and I believe he's doing it. As far as the artwork goes, the tribe is accumulating a lot of nice work by different artists, and I'm so happy to see it.
For their museum.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I'd like to talk a bit about your philosophies, art philosophies and practices, and I know your primary medium is acrylic. Was that the first medium you worked with, or did you experiment with some others?
No, my first attempt at painting was with oil, and I did a painting. I was so excited. I finished it. It did look pretty good, I thought. And no one had ever told me about dryers or thinners and all these things. So, you know, 1 month, 2 months, 5 months, the paint was still wet. So I thought, man, there's something wrong here. Well, I finally learned about the dryers and the thinners. But the oil, you know, um, some people like to work with it, but I prefer acrylic because it dries fast and you can continue to create. The acrylics, you can do it, build something up in layers. And basically you do the same thing with oil, except with the acrylic you do it in 1/10 the time. And I'd worked in gouache, I'd worked in watercolor, but the acrylic was my favorite. Over the years I've been able to do things with acrylic that they don't even have in the books. So, and of course that all come about through experimentation.
What's an example of, you don't have to give away trade secrets,
No,
but.
no. Well, let me think a minute. You know, in most paintings, I start with the background. I'll do the sky first. You can do 15 different types of skies. With the acrylic, you can lay the paint down, you can add water. It'll give you a blend of color. Or you can put it in with a brush. It's just endless what you can do. And throughout a painting, you know, you learn how to, do rocks and water and people. And actually, painting is, for me, it's like having a tool chest of all these different techniques. And when I decide what I'm wanting to do, I pull from that knowledge, and that's how I do a painting. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Perfect sense. Do you paint primarily on canvas? Do you use boards sometimes, or?
Well, initially I painted on paper and board, but I prefer the canvas because, well, mainly the main thing about it was they have what they call gallery wrap. It comes around, you paint the edge, you're done. We used to spend a lot of money framing things, and then they wouldn't like it. So I found out that if they liked the painting, they could frame it however they wanted. And that's basically what I still do today.
How has your palette or your changed over the years? I know when you experiment with different phases, sometimes then the colors change too.
Well, you know, I'll tell you, I'm liable to do a painting in pastels, or I may jump in with real strong color, and I'm spoiled. It's like being in a candy store, you know. One time in the 80s, they did a one-man show at the Cherokee Nation, and there was 50-some paintings, and most of them were borrowed from different collectors. And they made the comment that people really enjoyed the show because they thought there was about 10 different artists. And while they were hanging it, I could see it, you know. The problem with me is I never stayed with one thing. If it's what I want to paint, I'd come back and do it. But I wouldn't stop there. And I've done that my whole life.
You stated in one of the interviews that you wanted to paint more than Cherokees. Is that what kind of opened up the avenue for you to look at these changes in format and style?
Of course, you know, as you get older, you start to realize that you're not going to live forever, and then you start to think about your heritage, and it's become important to me. I actually now, one of my main goals is to paint historical paintings about the Cherokee people. And of course, you know, we have the ability to take that and break it down and reproduce it and gift items and everything else. So I don't mind spending several months on a big painting because you know, most of them have sold, but being able to reproduce them the way we do, that's even better.
And for those sort of more historical, I guess, paintings, what kinds of research do you do?
Oh, we do a lot of research. Tracy, God, what was that? I'm trying to think. Out at the museum, what do they call that? The school that burned down. Yeah, we were up in Northeastern, and she used to go to school up there. And we went up there and found out a lot. You know, back in those days, the lighter skinned Cherokees were considered more the elite, and full blood or darker, the ones that did their laundry and cleaned the dormitories and things. I'll tell you, you know, I learned a lot from Cecil Dick, you know. I guess you just learn from everybody you meet, really.
And he was really well known for
Yes, he
his
was.
knowledge base, wasn't he?
Sure was. Some great advice one time. He said, pick out your primary colors, and then the one that stands out the most, add a little bit of that color to every shade of everything you do, and it'll all tie in. And it does. It does.
One of the themes that I really enjoy in your paintings, and I don't know if you've done any recently, you might have, but were the cave images.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how you got they're very dramatic, how you got the idea to develop that particular image.
Well, what actually happened was to have a scene here in a cave, the people, but you're further in the cave looking out. So that's how that started right there. Well, here's one right here.
Okay, yeah. Wonderful. We'll put that on the video.
That's how it started. And, you know, the holdouts back in North Carolina, I'd read that a lot of these people went into the caves. So it was appropriate for, you know, what I wanted to paint.
Another motif that I really enjoy is the rabbit, and it's both a play on your name and an important character in traditional Cherokee stories.
I really wish that years ago I would have tried or attempted to paint paintings that depicted the different legends and myths. I can still do some, but I regret I didn't do more. There's so much humor in life, you know. And with a name like Rabbit, I wish my mother would have named me Peter Jack, but she didn't.
How about your signature? Did you kind of find that?
Well, it actually changed. Way back, I signed a painting with a B and an R combined, then R-A-B-B-I-T. And then above the rabbit, I always have a cross like radiating out. And someone asked me, is that a bird track or something? I said, no. it's a cross, and I give credit to God for whatever ability I have.
Neat. What role does story or narrative play in your work?
I'm sorry?
What role does story or narrative play in your work?
I'm not sure what do you mean?
Um,
Break it
Are
down to
you
my
sure?
level.
Sure. Is it really important to you that there be a story, or is there sometimes, or do you sometimes just see a
I got
picture in
you.
your mind?
No, I don't always paint a story. I like to capture place, the mood, color. Sometimes a flower or something is just beautiful. You stop right there. Doesn't need anything else. So I guess it just depends on what I want to paint and how I go about painting it.
Can you describe your creative process from the beginning when you get your ideas, etc.?
Well, I don't know. It comes at funny times. You'll be driving down the road and something will hit you. You'll see here that triggers something. In the beginning, I had difficulty in trying to, what do I paint next? And now I have difficulty in painting everything I want to paint.
That's a nice problem to have. Is sketching, do you do much preliminary sketching or?
No, I will if I have to. But I think it's easier just to, the style of painting that I do, you can do most of it just with the brush and painting. Tracy, on the other hand, is more precise. She's kind of like Ben Harjo, or I guess Merlin does the same thing. But when I was in school, it killed me to sketch something then paint over it. So I just convinced myself I could paint it without sketching. So I did.
Karen mentioned on the video that a sense of fun is very important to you. How does that translate into your paintings?
A sense of what?
A sense of fun or humor.
I think probably I'm so fortunate to enjoy everything I paint, or at least 99% of it. I feel so blessed, and I can find humor in a lot of things. My mind never stops working, and it may show up in a painting or it may not, but I've got a great job. I have something I enjoy.
I've wondered if part of you likes to challenge sort of stereotypes of appearance with regard to your Indian images, because I think about some of the Indians with blue eyes or sporting beards, and of course the Indians know the Indians do look like that. But I don't know if you ever had someone object to something because it didn't, quote, look Indian enough.
Well, I was at an art show years ago. A lady walked up and started asking about different paintings, and I was trying to explain them. And she said, "Are you Indian?" I said, "Well, yes, ma'am, I'm half Cherokee." She said, "No, you're not." I said, "Who, what?" She said, "You're not Indian. Indians don't shave." And I said, "Who told you that?" And she said, "I've seen all the Western movies." I said, "Well, have a nice day." But, I have some cousins that their mother was full blood. My dad was full blood, and one of the boys took after his dad, which was he was German, and the mother's full blood Cherokee, and the daughter was like me. You know, I think it's great that there was a time in America when people wouldn't admit they were Indian. And like everything else, it changed.
You've said that you like to keep your art affordable. Why is that important to you?
Well, I've shifted now in my old age. The originals have gone up, but because we do all the different reproductions and gift items, we try to make something affordable to anybody that likes it. Not everybody wants it original. I don't know, it's kind of bad. You paint long enough and you have to go up. So either you don't sell them and just sit on them, or you have the options of the gift items. And that's where Tracy came, when she came on board. She's really worked hard. We have a lot of customers that deal with our gift items.
Can you expand on that a little more, just how you two work together? I know you show together.
Well, she says, do this, I say okay. She says, go there, I say okay. And that's about it.
So,
no, I trust her. I trust her judgment, and I respect her. So we work well together.
that's wonderful. I agree with Karen that artists' wives are sometimes their greatest critics and probably their most trusted. How important is it for you to get feedback from Karen or Tracy?
She makes me mad occasionally. Both of them do. I think I've done a nice piece, and they start to break her down. Well, you need a little here, this. They're right, and I hate to admit it, but no, I valued their opinion. I did one here a while back, and I thought, boy, man, you can't improve on this. And Karen did. And you think, this is the best painting I've ever done. But then you give it a couple of days to cool off, come back and look at it, and then you can see it more clearly. It needs this and this.
What about, looking back, what are some pivotal moments when you think you could have gone down one road, but you decided to go down another in terms of your artwork?
Yeah. You know, I think everything happens the way it's supposed to. I think somebody's in charge. You know, we can shift and change things. And I'm so fortunate that painting found me. And I enjoy it. If I could do it all over again, I would not change anything. I would do it the same way. You know, I have no complaints.
You mentioned the Five Tribes, recognition as a master artist as one of the high points in your career. What about another high point? Did you enter the Philbrook art shows at any point?
No, I never entered Philbrook.
But in Santa Fe, you...
Oh, Santa Fe. Yeah, that's good. One year, I went out there, let's see. I applied for a booth, and I was on the plaza, and I oh gosh, I believe I got 3 first places, best of class in the miniature division, the Mama Day Award. The Mama Day Award. That was probably the most awards I ever won at one time. And you know, to win in Santa Fe, when you know the other art that's there. I won on a miniature that was 1 inch by 2 inches. And I think I sold it for $600. And I could have sold it 10 times. But at that particular show, I had enough blue ribbons that I guess that was a high point.
That was a big sweep. Can you explain what the Mama Day Award was for in Santa Fe? I hadn't heard of that one.
Oh Lord, I don't know.
Was it maybe Southwest?
The Al Mama Day. I'm not sure. I guess he must have sponsored the art in some way. And on one of my paintings, I won the Al Mama Day Award. And on another painting, you know, I'm not sure what it was, but the artist Helen Horton, she liked my work and what I was doing, and she gave me an award. And I hate to admit it, I don't remember just what it was.
What a compliment, though.
I mean, you know, I'll tell you the truth. A lot of people over the years, I think, have misread me. I think some people think I'm standoffish, or I may not like them or whatever, and that's not the case. You know, I can honestly say I have never purposely done anything to any artist my whole life. When I get an award, I appreciate it, but I like it better when I get the check. Because, you know, if you're doing it for a living, that's what's important.
Right.
So I just never let that sort of thing take hold, you know, just never did.
We talked about another high point in your career. What was one of the low points?
Well, as far as the art goes, one of the low points in the beginning was when I made the choice to do it full time. Went to a show, and of course it didn't work out. I had these paintings and no money, and right then I thought, oh man, this ain't gonna work. So immediately, that's when I decided. It was about the time I started moving out to the Southwest. I decided right then I was never going to put all my eggs in one basket again. Wasn't going to do it, still don't do it. And I always liked the option of having something you could go this way or that way.
So in terms of, you're talking about style or subject matter, you had some paintings that maybe were, or are you talking about not having all paintings and perhaps, or no?
Well, this was in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll tell you, you know, life is like a big river. The better known you are, you reap the benefits from that. But even that doesn't help at some point. It moves on, and you have a lot of new people coming on scene. And you have to continually, let's see what I was trying to say. You have to continually have new people appreciate what you do. And if they buy a greeting card today, they may buy an original 10 years from now. So I think that's where my daughter was very smart. And you know, it made perfect sense once, you know, I didn't think of it. So it made perfect sense. So we make a pretty good team. I work hard, she goes swimming.
You've struggled a bit with some health issues. Did they interrupt your painting, or were you able to sort of keep on painting?
No, I tell you, I've had quite a deal. When I was in Vietnam, I got into that Agent Orange out in the jungle, and when I came back, as close as I can figure is probably I was in my early 20s, and I didn't know I was diabetic until probably close to 30 years old. Ask me again what you were.
Well, just sort of, it's a struggle sometimes when you're not
Oh, the
feeling well
health,
to
yeah.
keep painting, but yet.
Well, what happened was like I say, because the Agent Orange had caused diabetes, and then over the years it gradually hurt you. Mm-hmm. And you know, I've had 2 or 3 eye operations. I just thank God that we have the medical technology and procedures that could help someone like me today. A few years back, I'd be blind. And you know, I've lost both kidneys because of the diabetes, and I do dialysis at home. Every night I hook up to a machine and it goes 8 hours. Well, I chose the peritoneal, that procedure, where I can do it at home, and it gives me a lot more freedom than someone that does the hemodialysis. I don't have to go sit in a chair for 4 hours, you know, or however long it takes. But you know, we're all going to die. It's just a matter of when. I trust the Lord that when He's ready, I'm going. I'll tell you the truth. I've been in so many situations, Vietnam, here, everywhere, where if it wasn't, God is real. He is real. And whoever watches this, I hope to God that they get saved. Because it's all coming to a head.
I know that you still paint what you want to paint, and that may change from day to day. But I do. It seems to me that in a way your style is kind of looping back around a little bit with the strong colors, the more representational things.
You know, I look at painting like flowers. Out in the field, you have flowers, a flower garden. There's pastels, there's red purples, there's green, yellows, all these things. I tell you, the color wheel that you go by and the color, what would you call it, theory or history, it's all in nature. If you just look at the plant, there it is. So, you know, Uh, the reason I like to experiment and paint the way I do, if you want realism, take a photograph. But if you want something a little different, then give me a chance. You might like it.
Well, we're going to look at a couple of your paintings in a minute here. Is there anything you'd like to add, Bill, or anything we didn't talk about you feel is important?
Well, it's just going to be used for students.
And the general public.
General public.
Whoever's interested.
Well, I think one thing that I would like to say to any beginning artist that put all they can, they work hard, we all did, on a painting that you know is going to win something. And you put it in a competitive show and it gets nothing. I've known some artists over the years that were so devastated they quit. They actually quit painting or drawing. And the one lesson I've learned is no matter what you do, you are never going to please everyone. And, you know, if you're pleasing yourself, if you're true to yourself, and if you're happy with it, that's all you can do.
That's a great way to sum that up. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the first painting. Would you like to tell me about this painting, Bill?
This painting here is one of the cave paintings that, but it's in reverse. You're on the outside looking into the cave, and there's a Cherokee warrior about the 1700s. The scalp lock, and of course there's the face paint. You know, I think that would scare anybody if they, or at least it would shock them for a second. But it's a painting that, you know, I just wanted to capture an idea. No history, just there it is. That's what this might look like if you were there and that happened.
Very dramatic. Bill, can you talk about this painting a little bit?
This is one of my paintings that I call a sky image. Back when I was, probably second or third grade up in Wyoming, I used to play out in the sagebrush and cactus, and you look up and you see the different cloud formations, and sometimes they would look like a face or an animal or different things. So of course, you know, I never forgot that, and then as my ability grew, I figured out a way to paint this type of painting or sky image. And you know, I believe in spirits and the afterlife. So maybe this is the wind if you could see it.
What about this painting, Bill?
This is one that, one of the ones that I was trying to capture Cherokee heritage and history. You know, I would say this is a period probably around the 1830s, prior to the removal. The males enjoyed the beadwork, the turban, of course, and you know, some of the feathers that you can't hardly see them, but if you look closely, they're in there. You can see the feathers. But you know, the Cherokees, adapted a lot of European traditions and ways. So this is basically what I've tried to capture here. You can see the log cabin there in the back. I think that one, I'm pretty happy with it. It came out fine.
Now I understand this is a painting that you and Tracy did together.
Yeah, we decided to work on this together. I did all the background and the log cabin and the creek and all these things. Then Tracy came in, and she had such control with the brush. She did the figure here. This is a period, I suppose, around the 1820 to 30s. And once again, you see the figure with the turban and the moccasins and the beadwork. There on the left side, you get up close to that and you can count the beads. So the combination of my color and her beautiful technique and beadwork, it seems to work pretty good together.
And it was called?
Land of My Blood.
That is beautiful.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's Land of My Heart.
It's just beautiful.
I did do a painting named Land of My Blood, though.